A corroded lump of bronze sat on a museum shelf for decades, hiding a secret. This is the antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old Greek device that should not exist. We will trace its journey from a stormy shipwreck to the forefront of modern science, and by the end, you will see the ancient world through entirely new eyes. How could a hand-cranked computer predict cosmic events with pinpoint accuracy? And why was such genius lost for over 1,000 years? What does this single artifact tell us about the fragile nature of human knowledge itself? The year was 1900, and a group of sponge divers found themselves caught in a violent Mediterranean storm. Seeking shelter near the rocky island of Antikythera, they made a decision that would change history. As the waters calmed, one of the men dove to scout the seabed and surfaced minutes later with a tale of unbelievable treasure. He described a ghostly landscape of marble and bronze, where statues seemed to stare back from the darkness. This was not just a shipwreck, it was a time capsule from the 1st century before the Common Era, carrying a fortune in art and luxury from the Greek world toward Rome. Amidst the twisted remains of the vessel lay breathtaking bronze sculptures, delicate glassware, and coins that glittered even under the sea. But there was one item that did not glitter. Pulled from the sediment was a lump of green, heavily encrusted metal, about the size of a large book. It was cracked and fused with pieces of wood. To the divers, and even to the archaeologists who first received the haul in Athens, it was an afterthought. It was catalogued simply as a piece of corroded bronze, set aside while the magnificent statues took center stage. The human cost of recovering these treasures was profound. The deep dives using primitive equipment led to serious health consequences for the crew, a somber reminder of the risks taken to bring this history to light. For nearly half a century, this peculiar lump sat quietly in the National Archaeological Museum. It looked like a piece of rock, a geological accident, not a manufactured object. The thick, hard layer of calcium deposits and corrosion, formed over 2 millennia underwater, completely concealed its truth. It was a vault sealed by the sea itself. No one could have guessed that inside this unassuming crust was not ore but engineered gearwheels, not random debris but precisely cut bronze teeth. Not a rock but the most sophisticated scientific instrument the ancient world would ever produce. The stage was now set, but the main actor remained hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal its impossible genius. The first person to suspect the truth was an archaeologist named Valerio Stais. In 1902, while examining the strange lump in the museum, he noticed something impossible. A tiny, perfect sliver of a bronze gearwheel was peeking out from a crack in the crust. His mind raced. Gearwheels belonged to clocks, to complex machinery, not to ancient Greek shipwrecks. He proposed it might be an astrolabe, a device for measuring star positions, but even that felt inadequate. The sheer number of gears he could barely glimpse hinted at something far more intricate. For decades, this single observation hung in the air, a puzzle no one could solve. The calcification was like concrete, fusing everything into a solid, unreadable mass. Without a way to see inside, imagination filled the void. Some scholars suggested it was a piece of modern equipment that had accidentally fallen onto the ancient wreck site. Others proposed it was an ornate ornament, a ceremonial object with moving parts for show. The wildest theories gained traction simply because the truth seemed too fantastical to be real. How could a 2,000-year-old civilization, one we pictured carving marble and debating philosophy, possess the engineering precision for a machine of gears? This object became an anomaly, a ghost in the historical record that challenged everything experts thought they knew about technological progress. It was not until the 1950s that a researcher named Derek J. De Solla Price decided to confront the ghost directly. Price was a historian of science, fascinated by how ideas and inventions evolved. He brought a new tool to the mystery, gamma-ray imaging, which could act like an X-ray for metal. When he first saw the images, the ghost materialized into breathtaking detail. Inside that ugly lump was a labyrinth, dozens of interlocking gearwheels, some with teeth so fine they resembled the workings of a modern wristwatch. There were graduated scales, inscriptions in tiny Greek letters, and pointers that clearly moved in coordinated ways. Price spent years meticulously studying these shadowy images. In 1959, he published a revolutionary paper. He declared the antikythera mechanism was not merely an instrument, it was a computer. Specifically, he called it a calendar computer, designed to model the motions of the sun and the moon. The academic world was stunned. Some were captivated by the vision, while others dismissed it as overreach, a modern mind projecting its own complexity onto an ancient artifact. This period of intense debate and confusion was crucial. It proved the mechanism did not fit. It shattered the comfortable timeline of history, demanding a rewrite. The question was no longer what it was, but how such a thing could possibly exist, and who had the mind to conceive it. Price's X-ray vision had revealed the ghost, but to understand its soul, we had to see its bones. The antikythera mechanism was a masterpiece of miniaturization, a universe of calculation packed into a space no larger than a modern shoebox. Picture the device as it once was. A wooden case, likely elegant and finished, protected the delicate bronze heart within. On the front, a large, beautiful dial, its face a complex map of the cosmos. On the back, two more dials, spiraling and concentric, and covering it all, protective doors like the covers of a sacred book. This was not a stationary monument. It was designed to be held, carried, and operated by turning a simple hand crank on its side. With each rotation, a hidden symphony of at least 30 interlocking gears would begin to play. These were not crude cogs. Each gear wheel was painstakingly cut by hand from a sheet of bronze, its teeth filed into precise triangles to mesh perfectly with its neighbors. Some of these gears are astonishingly small, with teeth finer than a grain of rice. The complexity is staggering. One particular gear, a central masterpiece, has 223 teeth. This is not a random number. It is a key that unlocks the moon's subtle dance, a direct mathematical link to a 19-year cycle called the Metonic cycle, used to harmonize lunar months with the solar year. The gears were mounted on square axles, some of which passed right through the central plates, allowing a single turn of the crank to power multiple displays on both the front and back of the device simultaneously. This is three-dimensional engineering, a puzzle box of motion where every component had to be planned in relation to all the others before a single piece was cast. The sheer precision implies something profound. This was not the frantic scribbling of a lone genius in a workshop. The confidence in the design, the flawless execution, suggests a tradition. It hints at a school of thought, a lineage of craftsmen and philosophers who had been building and refining such devices for generations. We are looking at the sole survivor of a lost industry. Holding this device in your hands, you would not feel you were holding an ancient artifact. You would feel the weight of engineered intent, the smooth resistance of precision, the quiet click of knowledge turning into prediction. It feels in every way like an object out of time. The machine's gears revealed its mechanical soul, but to hear its voice, we had to read its words. Etched across every available surface of the bronze plates, in letters sometimes smaller than a millimeter high, was a secret library. Thousands of Greek characters formed a built-in user manual, a guide to the cosmos written in metal. For a century, this text was a tantalizing blur, visible only in frustrating fragments through the crust. The true breakthrough came when a team of scientists and historians, the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project employed a revolutionary tool, three-dimensional X-ray tomography. This technology, akin to a medical CT scan, allowed them to peer through the corrosion layer by layer, digitally peeling back time itself. Suddenly, the ghostly inscriptions snapped into sharp, legible focus. What they read was nothing short of a philosophical manifesto written by an engineer. The technical terms were breathtakingly specific. They named complex astronomical cycles like the Saros and the Metonic, cycles that govern eclipses and lunar phases. They identified planets with poetic clarity, calling Venus the star of Aphrodite and Mars the star of Aries. The moon was not just the moon, it was the little sphere, a term of both precision and wonder. These were not labels for a static display, they were instructions for a dynamic model. A user would turn the crank and watch the little bronze sphere of the moon advance through its phases on one dial, while the star of Aphrodite traced its looping path against the zodiac on another. The device transformed from an abstract collection of gears into a practical, hands-on planetarium, but the inscriptions served a deeper, more human purpose as well. Researchers found extensive parapegma text, a detailed calendar that linked specific dates to the seasonal risings and settings of bright stars and constellations. This was practical, earthly knowledge. It told a farmer when to expect the pre-dawn rising of the Pleiades, a signal to begin the harvest. It informed a sailor when the constellation Argo would be visible, marking a safer season for travel. This layer of information confirms the mechanism was not locked in an ivory tower. It was a bridge between the cosmic and the commonplace, a tool for teaching, for demonstration, and for planning the rhythms of life. A philosopher could use it to illustrate Plato's celestial spheres. A wealthy patron could marvel at its prediction of a coming eclipse, a display of knowledge and power. The words written on its face provide the ultimate evidence, a first-person account from the ancient world stating, plainly, this is a machine for understanding the heavens. It had a voice, and after 2,000 years of silence we could finally listen. That front dial was a universe in bronze. Encased behind its protective glass or mica cover, two main rings told a story of time and space. The outer ring displayed the 365-day Egyptian calendar, a practical, civil tool for marking the year. Moving inward, the next ring was a stunning band of the zodiac, the ancient map of the constellations through which the sun appears to travel. A single, elegant pointer, driven by the hidden gears, would advance along these rings with each turn of the crank. This pointer represented the sun. As you turned the handle, you could watch this golden marker progress through the months and simultaneously journey from Aries to Taurus to Gemini, visually linking the passage of days with the sun's majestic path against the backdrop of the stars. It was a simple, profound demonstration of the solar year, but the sun was not alone on this stage. Above the main dial, mounted on its own delicate arm, was the mechanism's most poetic creation, the moon ball. This tiny sphere, just a few millimeters across, was a masterpiece of ancient metallurgy and observation. One hemisphere was plated in bright silver, the other in dark, nearly black bronze. And it rotated slowly and precisely, completing one full turn every lunar month. As it turned, the silvered side would face the sun pointer to show a full moon, or turn completely away to show the new moon, with every crescent and gibbous phase in between rendered with perfect accuracy. You could literally watch the moonlight wax and wane in the palm of your hand. This was not a static ornament. It was a dynamic, mechanical model of the cosmos, an orrery centuries before the word was coined. The philosophical implications are breathtaking. Here was the geocentric universe of Aristotle and Ptolemy, not as a complex diagram in a scroll, but as a living, moving reality. A student or a philosopher could operate the crank and see the elegant dance of the heavens unfold before them, a tangible proof of cosmic order. The device even accounted for the moon's subtle irregularities, its slight speeding up and slowing down in its orbit through an ingenious bit of engineering called a pin and slot device. This allowed the moon pointer to vary its speed, modeling an astronomical truth that the Greeks called the lunar anomaly. It meant this model was not just a pretty approximation. It was a precise predictive engine. With the correct settings, it could forecast eclipses, marking them on the dial with inscriptions that read, "Here, eclipse." The abstract, table-based calculations of Babylonian astronomers were transformed into a visible, mechanical certainty. When the Roman writer Cicero described a planetarium built by Archimedes that showed the motions of the sun, moon, and planets, many historians dismissed it as legend or exaggeration. The antikythera mechanism is that legend made solid bronze. It proves that such devices were not mere fantasy, but a pinnacle of a lost technological tradition. To look upon that front dial in operation was to see the Greek mind at its most ambitious, seeking not just to observe the cosmos, but to hold its rhythms in their hands and turn its pages with a crank. While the front dial presented the living sky, the back of the device was its true brain, a dense forest of mathematical thought. Turning the mechanism over revealed a suite of at least 5 smaller dials, arranged like the faces of a complex, multi-purpose clock. Each one tracked a different long-term astronomical cycle, solving a fundamental problem that had challenged civilizations for millennia: the reliable measurement of time itself. The most prominent was a large spiral dial, divided into 223 tiny cells, one for each lunar month in a cycle called the Saros. This 19-year period is the key to predicting eclipses, as the Sun, Moon, and Earth return to the same relative positions. As the user turned the crank, a pointer would travel along this spiral path. Certain cells were marked with ancient Greek glyphs, inscriptions that translated to eclipse, and even specified the predicted time of day and the type of eclipse, whether of the sun or the moon. With this dial, a priest or an astronomer could look decades into the future and know, with mechanical certainty, when the daylight would dim or the moon would turn copper red. It transformed a terrifying celestial omen into a predictable, scheduled event, a profound shift from superstition to calculated knowledge. Adjacent to this eclipse predictor was another dial tracking the Callippic cycle, a refinement spanning 76 years. This was essentially 4 metonic cycles with 1 day subtracted for greater accuracy, a centuries-long effort to perfectly sync the lunar calendar with the solar year. For a society that scheduled religious festivals, agricultural work, and political terms by the moon, this was not abstract math. It was civic infrastructure encoded in bronze. Perhaps the most human connection, however, was found on a dial simply called the games dial. This scale listed the 4-year cycle of the major Panhellenic athletic competitions, the crown jewel being the Olympic Games. Here, the cosmic machinery directly touched earthly celebration. The mechanism linked the inexorable turn of the heavens to the rhythmic pulse of human culture, reminding the user that the Olympics were not just a sporting event, but a celestial anniversary, a festival timed to the order of the cosmos. Together, this suite of interlocking calendars made the antikythera mechanism a universal tool for chronological planning. It was an almanac, an eclipse warning system, and a religious festival planner, all powered by a single hand crank. The front was the beautiful, moving display, the show of the heavens, but the back was where the complex gearing performed its silent calculations, where the genius of its creators was fully laid bare. This was not a toy for idle curiosity. It was an engine for structuring time, for imposing human understanding onto the vast, cyclical patterns of the universe. To operate it was to hold a piece of that cosmic order in your hands, and to see the future written in the turn of a gear. To build such a machine, its creators had to translate the silent music of the heavens into the language of gears. The soul of the device was its interconnected gear train, a physical embodiment of astronomical ratios. Think of it this way. The ancient Greeks observed that celestial bodies move in repeating cycles. The moon returns to the same phase, a synodic month, about every 29.5 days. The sun returns to the same position against the stars, a solar year, in about 365.25 days. These are not neat, whole numbers. The genius of the mechanism was in finding the mathematical bridges between these cycles and then forging those bridges out of bronze. They did this by selecting gear wheels with very specific tooth counts. A gear with 127 teeth, for instance, was crucial for modeling the moon's subtle monthly motion with astonishing accuracy. Another, with 235 teeth, directly embodied the 19-year metonic cycle, which aligns solar years and lunar months. When these custom gears meshed together, driven by a single hand crank, they performed division and multiplication through rotation. One turn of the input shaft might result in 1/235th of a turn on another gear, perfectly modeling a 19-year span in a compact mechanical form. It was applied mathematics in 3 dimensions, where each bronze wheel was a variable in a cosmic formula, turning abstract Babylonian period relations into tangible, turning motion. The most breathtaking proof of this mathematical mind is a component now called the differential gear. Nestled in the heart of the machine, this assembly of gears had one job: to calculate the ever-changing phase of the moon you see in the sky. Here is the problem it solved mechanically. The moon's phase depends on the difference between the moon's position in its orbit and the sun's position along the ecliptic. To show the correct phase on that beautiful silver and bronze moon ball, the machine had to constantly subtract the sun's movement from the moon's movement. This is a problem of differential motion, a calculation we associate with complex mathematics. The antikythera mechanism solves it with an elegant gear train that combines 2 input rotations into a single corrected output. This kind of differential gearwork was not seen again in any surviving artifact until the 16th century, inside sophisticated mechanical clocks. Its presence here over 1,000 years earlier is a thunderclap in the history of technology. It is not just clever craftsmanship, it is theoretical genius made solid. The engineering precision required to bring these mathematical ideas to life is itself staggering. To cut a gear with 223 teeth by hand without a single error that would jam the entire system implies an advanced workshop tradition. They likely used master templates, perhaps made of wood or bronze, to trace the tooth profiles. The selection of prime numbers for tooth counts, like 127 and 223, shows a deep understanding of factorization, ensuring the gears would mesh in the only way that produced the correct, irreducible astronomical ratios. This was a machine built by philosophers who thought like engineers, and engineers who reasoned like philosophers. They looked at the irregular dance of the cosmos and saw, hidden within it, a perfect, interlocking clockwork they could reconstruct in their own hands. But the moon does not move with perfect clockwork regularity. Its journey is a gentle, rhythmic sway, a subtle speeding up and slowing down in its orbit that astronomers call the lunar anomaly. This was not a secret to the ancient world. Babylonian sky watchers had meticulously recorded this irregularity in their clay tablets centuries earlier, describing it with complex numerical tables. Yet knowing a fact mathematically is one thing. Building a machine that breathes that same irregularity into life is something else entirely. The creators of the antikythera mechanism achieved just that, and their solution is a tiny masterpiece of mechanical empathy. Nestled within the gear train is a component so clever it seems to defy its own era, the pin and slot device. On the surface, it looks deceptively simple. A small pin fixed to one gear extends out to engage with a long, curved slot cut into the face of a neighboring gear. As the first gear turns steadily, driven by the main crank, the pin does not simply push the slotted gear at a constant rate. Instead, as the pin travels along the length of the slot, it acts like a variable lever. When the pin is near the center of the slot, the motion is direct and faster. When it reaches the far ends of the slot, the leverage changes and the driven gear slows down. The result is a smooth, sinusoidal variation in speed, a gentle acceleration and deceleration that perfectly mirrors the moon's own observed dance. This was not a random approximation. It was a precise physical analog for a specific astronomical inequality. Think of it as the first mechanical differential equation, solved not with ink on parchment, but with bronze and ingenuity. For a philosopher of the time, this feature would have been nothing short of revelatory. Here was the abstract, table-based knowledge of the Babylonians transformed into a tangible, turning reality. The irregularity was no longer just a number in a column. It was a behavior you could see and feel, a physical proof that the heavens operated by complex yet understandable rules. The pin and slot device represents a monumental leap in thought. It shows the builders had moved far beyond simply modeling periods and cycles. They were now simulating true celestial kinematics, the actual quality of motion itself. They were asking not just where the moon would be, but how it would move to get there. This bridge between raw observational data and sophisticated mechanical simulation would not be crossed again in any surviving artifact for well over a millennium, not until the great astronomical clocks of medieval Europe. In that one small assembly, a pin no bigger than a match head engaging a slot a few centimeters long, we see the spark of a scientific revolution that flickered brightly, was lost to the deep sea, and had to be painfully rediscovered centuries later. It is a quiet, unassuming piece of bronze that speaks louder than any treatise about the breathtaking heights of ancient Greek science. Such a machine could never be the work of a solitary genius in a dusty workshop. The sheer confidence in its design, the flawless execution of its impossibly fine gears, points to something far more significant, a school of thought. This was almost certainly the product of an intellectual tradition flourishing in one of the great hubs of the Hellenistic world, likely the island of Rhodes, a center for astronomy and engineering, or perhaps the legendary library of Alexandria, where the world's knowledge converged. The theoretical mind behind the gears could have been a figure like Hipparchus, the astronomer who first mathematically described the moon's irregular motion, the very motion so beautifully modeled by the pin and slot device. Or perhaps it was a follower of the legendary Archimedes of Syracuse, whose own planetarium so impressed Cicero. The craftsmanship suggests a workshop of master artisans who could translate complex astronomical ratios into tangible, turning bronze. This was a collaboration, the meeting point of the philosopher's sky charts and the artisan's precision files. But who was this magnificent device actually for? It was almost certainly not a practical tool for navigation at sea. Its delicate construction and intricate displays were ill-suited for the pitching deck of a ship. Instead, think of it as a demonstrative instrument, a philosopher's teaching aid. A wealthy patron, perhaps a king or a noble scholar, likely commissioned it as the ultimate symbol of intellectual prestige. In the hands of a teacher, it could bring Plato's perfect celestial spheres to life for students. For a wealthy owner, it was a conversation piece of unparalleled sophistication, a way to demonstrate mastery over the cosmos itself by predicting an eclipse for guests. It even served the purpose of astrological calculation, which for the Greeks was not mere superstition but a serious extension of their belief in a cosmos governed by mathematical order. By turning the crank, one could see the future positions of planets and stars, laying the groundwork for casting a horoscope based on the mechanical certainty of the heavens. We have a tantalizing historical echo that confirms such objects were real and coveted. The Roman orator Cicero wrote of a bronze sphere brought to Rome by General Marcus Claudius Marcellus after the sack of Syracuse. This sphere, said to have been built by Archimedes, showed the motions of the sun, moon, and planets. For years, scholars debated whether Cicero was describing a real device or a poetic legend. The antikythera mechanism is the proof. It confirms that these intricate planetaria were not myth, but the pinnacle of Hellenistic craftsmanship, prized as trophies of war and marvels of science. They were physical manifestations of a culture's deepest ambition to make the cosmos comprehensible. The mechanism served one overarching purpose: to demonstrate that the bewildering dance of the heavens was not chaotic, but governed by elegant, predictable order. It was a testament to the Greek pursuit of theoria, contemplative understanding of the natural world. Its very existence implies a society that valued the synthesis of abstract knowledge, exquisite craftsmanship, and profound natural philosophy. It was a product of a specific, brilliant moment in history where resources, curiosity, and skill aligned, a moment that would soon fade, leaving this single, cryptic artifact as its sole messenger. The gears turn with a precision born from numbers etched in clay over 1,000 years earlier. The astronomical heart of the antikythera mechanism, its very purpose, beats with rhythms first measured not in Greece but in Mesopotamia. The cycles it tracks so faithfully, the saros for eclipses, the 19-year metonic cycle for calendars, the longer exeligmos, these are not Greek discoveries. They are the legacy of Babylonian sky watchers, priests and scholars who for centuries meticulously recorded the movements of planets and stars on cuneiform tablets. They compiled vast tables of data, noting the exact timing of lunar eclipses and the slow drift of the seasons, until they distilled these observations into the precise numerical periods that govern the cosmos. The Greeks did not invent these cycles. They performed a breathtaking act of translation. They took this raw, empirical data, these abstract numbers from a different civilization, and asked a revolutionary question. What if we could make these numbers turn? The 19-year metonic cycle, a cornerstone for aligning lunar and solar calendars, is perfectly embodied in a single gear with 235 teeth. That number 235 is not a random choice. It is the exact number of lunar months in that 19-year cycle, a figure documented in Babylonian records long before it was cast in bronze on a Greek island. This is the true genius of the mechanism's creators. They were not just engineers or astronomers. They were master synthesizers, taking the accumulated knowledge of an older civilization and reimagining it as a physical, dynamic model. This fusion reveals a profound truth about the ancient world we often overlook. It was deeply interconnected. Knowledge was a commodity that flowed along the same trade routes as silk, spices, and precious metals. Greek merchants and scholars traveling to centers like Alexandria would have encountered Babylonian texts, their complex numerical tables translated and studied. The antikythera mechanism is the ultimate artifact of this intellectual exchange. It is a Greek machine powered by Babylonian mathematics, a physical testament to a conversation that stretched across empires and centuries. It proves that Greek theoretical science, with its love of geometry and cosmic order, did not spring from a vacuum. It was built upon a solid, centuries-old foundation of meticulous Near Eastern observation. This connection transforms the device. It is no longer merely a stunning Greek artifact. It becomes a monument to human collaboration, a bronze and gear embodiment of how knowledge transcends culture, language, and time. It stands as a silent witness to the first global network of ideas, where the observations of one culture became the engineering marvel of another, all in a shared quest to comprehend the sky. This single artifact forces us to confront a haunting mystery. If the Greeks could build this, why did the world have to wait over 1,000 years for anything remotely as complex? The disappearance of such genius is not a simple accident of history. It was the result of a perfect storm, a slow unraveling of the very conditions that made the mechanism possible in the first place. The Hellenistic world that birthed it was a unique ecosystem of learning. Think of places like the Library of Alexandria or the scholarly community on Rhodes. These were hubs where mathematicians, astronomers, philosophers, and master artisans could collaborate, supported by royal patronage and a culture that prized theoretical inquiry. This device was the fruit of that rare tree, but empires shift and priorities change. The rising Roman Republic, and later the Roman Empire, admired Greek culture and absorbed its knowledge, but with a different emphasis. The Romans were brilliant practical engineers, builders of aqueducts, roads, and monumental architecture. Their genius lay in applied science on a grand scale, in projects that served the state, the military, and urban life. The deep, abstract theoretical work required to design a cosmic calculator, while fascinating, did not have the same urgent utility. The intricate knowledge began to seem like a luxury, a specialist's curiosity rather than a cornerstone of education. As the Western Roman Empire entered a prolonged period of political fragmentation and economic change from the 3rd century onward, that fragile intellectual ecosystem collapsed. The great centers of learning faced immense challenges. The stable patronage that funded workshops and libraries dried up. The long, apprentice-based chains of specialized craft knowledge, where a master metalworker taught his students how to cut a 223-tooth gear, were broken. The synthetical knowledge, the marriage of advanced Babylonian astronomy with precision Greek engineering, simply dissipated. It was not stolen or destroyed in a single event. It faded like a language no one spoke anymore. The antikythera mechanism was a product of high technology in the ancient sense, and like any advanced niche, it was incredibly vulnerable. It required too many aligned stars, peace, wealth, curiosity, and a continuous line of teachers passing on esoteric skills. When those stars fell out of alignment, the technology became a dead end. Its rediscovery in a shipwreck is profoundly symbolic. It was not lost in a library fire or melted down for scrap. It was lost in transit, literally sinking beneath the waves while traveling from one center of power to another. It is a physical metaphor for knowledge itself, caught in the stormy passage between eras and slipping into the deep. For centuries, the very idea that the ancient world could produce such a thing was considered a fantasy. Its absence created a ghost in our historical timeline, a gap that silently insisted our understanding of progress was wrong. We are only now, 2,000 years later, beginning to fill that gap and comprehend what was truly lost when the lights of those great Hellenistic workshops went out. The silence that followed its loss spanned more than 1,000 years. To understand the true scale of what vanished with the antikythera mechanism, we must place it on the long timeline of human invention and see the empty space it leaves behind. The most direct comparison lies in the great astronomical clocks of medieval Europe, mechanical wonders that began to grace cathedral towers centuries later. Consider the magnificent clock built by Richard of Wallingford at St. Albans Abbey in the 1400s. It was a masterpiece of its age, a complex assembly of gears that displayed the motions of the sun and moon, predicted eclipses, and even showed the tides at London Bridge. Its creation was a monumental feat of medieval engineering, requiring years of labor and profound skill. Yet, this clock appeared over 1,400 years after the Greek device was lost beneath the waves. And while impressive in its scale and ambition, the early designs of these medieval clocks operated on a different principle. They were grand, monumental installations, often filling entire rooms or towering over town squares. Their gearing, while sophisticated, generally aimed for a different kind of accuracy, tracking time in hours and minutes for civic and religious life. They did not initially incorporate the kind of compact, integrated differential gearing that allowed the antikythera mechanism to so elegantly calculate the Moon's variable motion within a portable case. This is not to diminish the medieval achievement, but to highlight a profound discontinuity. The Greek device represents a peak on a technological mountain that was completely abandoned, forcing later cultures to climb a different slope from the base all over again. In the flourishing scholarly centers of the medieval Islamic world, the pursuit of astronomy reached dazzling heights. Ingenious devices like the astrolabe, a handheld model of the sky used for calculation and observation, were refined to an art form. Elaborate water clocks, such as the legendary one gifted to Charlemagne by the Caliph Harun al-Rashid, showcased automated marvels with moving figures and chiming bells. These were triumphs of precision and creativity, yet their design philosophy often favored a different path, one of beautiful instrumentation and timekeeping spectacle, rather than the deeply integrated, computational model of an entire cosmological system packed into a single, self-contained engine. The antikythera mechanism stands apart because it was not just an instrument for observation or a clock for telling time. It was a dedicated analog computer, a purpose-built machine for simulating reality. This distinction makes its reappearance in history so jarring. It is as if we found a single, perfectly formed fossil of a modern bird in a layer of rock among dinosaurs, a clear sign of a lineage that should not yet exist. The long winter between its creation and its medieval echoes represents one of history's great quiet periods for this specific kind of complex mechanical synthesis. That spark of genius, the drive to model natural law with intricate handmade machinery, would only be rekindled fully during the scientific revolution of the 16th and 17th centuries. It was then that minds like Galileo and Kepler, armed with new theories of planetary motion, would once again inspire craftsmen to build orreries and calculating machines, consciously seeking to turn the laws of physics into gears and dials. They were rebuilding a bridge that the ancient Greeks had not only designed but had already crossed, a bridge whose lone surviving pier had been submerged in the sea of time. This comparison does more than highlight the mechanism's sophistication. It reframes our entire narrative of progress. We often picture technological advancement as a steady, upward slope. The antikythera mechanism reveals that history is not a simple incline. It is a landscape of isolated peaks and deep valleys, where brilliant summits can be reached, forgotten, and then painstakingly rediscovered centuries later, their very existence a whispered challenge to everything we assume about the past. That long winter of forgetting ended not with a shovel but with a scanner. For decades after Price's initial X-rays, the mechanism remained a beautiful ghost, its deepest secrets still locked inside the calcified bronze. The fragments were too fragile to physically take apart, and the inscriptions were a maddening blur. The final, decisive chapter in this 2,000-year-old mystery was written not by a lone historian, but by a coalition of 21st-century scientists using tools that would have seemed like pure magic to the device's own creators. This was the work of the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project, an international team that brought together astronomers, physicists, and archaeologists. Their mission was to perform a digital autopsy to see through the corrosion without ever touching the ancient metal. Their primary tool was microfocus X-ray computed tomography. Imagine a medical CT scanner, but one so precise it could resolve details finer than a human hair. By rotating the fragments and taking thousands of radiographic slices, the team built a breathtakingly detailed three-dimensional model of the mechanism's interior. For the first time, researchers could virtually peel away the layers of time. They could fly through the gear train, examine each tooth from every angle, and see components that had been completely invisible, buried deep within the corroded mass. Alongside this, they used a technique called polynomial texture mapping, which captured the surface under raking light from countless directions. This process revealed the faintest scratches and inscriptions, turning blurred shadows into crisp, legible Greek letters. Suddenly, the user manual written on the bronze plates could be read in full. The team, led by researchers like Mike Edmonds and Tony Freeth, could now count gear teeth with absolute certainty. They confirmed the existence of the crucial 223-tooth Saros cycle gear. They mapped the exact pathways of the differential gear assembly, understanding for the first time how its elegant pin and slot system physically generated the moon's variable motion. But the biggest surprises were still to come. As they digitally reassembled the fragments, they noticed a previously overlooked feature on the front of the device. There was a complex, multi-layered assembly that had crumbled into an incomprehensible jumble. The 3D models allowed them to piece this puzzle back together virtually. What they found was revolutionary, a system of small, concentric rings that once held moving pointers for 5 planets known to the ancient Greeks: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. This was the mechanism's crowning achievement, a complete, working model of the known cosmos, with the sun and moon on the main display and the wandering planets on their own dedicated track. The device was even more sophisticated than anyone had dared to guess. It wasn't just a lunar calendar or an eclipse predictor, it was a full-fledged mechanical universe. The story of this decoding is a modern scientific saga in its own right. It is a tale of patient collaboration across disciplines, of building custom software to analyze ancient gear ratios, and of the quiet thrill that comes when a pixel on a screen resolves into a Greek word for eclipse or a perfectly formed gear tooth. This process proved a profound and poetic truth. Sometimes you need the technology of the future to fully comprehend the technology of the distant past. The very tools that define our own digital age became the key that finally turned the lock on this ancient analog computer. We could now see it not as a broken artifact, but as its creators intended, a symphony of bronze in motion, a miniature cosmos engineered by hand. The true ambition of the machine was cosmic. While the sun and moon danced on the main dial, the 5 wandering stars known to the ancient Greeks, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, were not forgotten. Recent analysis of the most fragmented pieces has revealed a breathtaking truth. The mechanism modeled them all. This required a leap in complexity that pushes the boundaries of ancient engineering, for the planets present a unique puzzle. Unlike the steady sun and the predictably irregular moon, the planets perform a strange dance in the night sky. They generally move eastward against the backdrop of stars, but periodically they slow, halt, and appear to travel backward for weeks or months before resuming their original course. Astronomers call this retrograde motion. To the Greeks, it was the defining mystery of the wanderers. Their solution, a brilliant piece of geometrical imagination, was the theory of epicycles. Imagine a planet not simply orbiting Earth, but instead traveling in a small circle called an epicycle, whose center itself travels along a larger circle around Earth. When the planet on its little circle moves in the opposite direction to the center of the big circle from our earthly viewpoint, it creates that temporary backward loop in the sky. For centuries, we understood this as a purely mathematical model, a clever abstraction in the scrolls of astronomers like Ptolemy. The antikythera mechanism proves it was something more. It was a blueprint for a machine. The builders implemented this theory physically, using an arrangement of gears now called epicyclic gearing. In this system, one gear is mounted not on a fixed axle, but on the arm of another moving gear. As the arm travels around, the mounted gear spins on its own axis. The combined motion creates that precise, looping path. The device would have had 5 separate epicyclic gear trains, one for each planet, each carefully calibrated to match the planet's unique period. Mercury's frantic dance would have completed its cycle in just 88 days, while Saturn's stately loop would have taken nearly 30 years. Each planet likely had its own small pointer, perhaps a tiny, crafted star, moving on its own dedicated ring on the front face of the device, threading its way through the carved zodiac. With a turn of the crank, a viewer could watch Mars begin its mysterious backward trek through Leo, or see Venus glide past the horns of Taurus. This transforms our understanding of the device entirely. It was no longer just an advanced calendar or an eclipse predictor. It was a complete mechanical universe, the computational challenge of integrating these 5 independent, variable motions, each with its own speed, its own retrograde timing, its own epicycle size, into a single, synchronized system powered by one hand crank is a feat that stuns modern engineers. It represents a holistic ambition that is almost overwhelming. The creators were not satisfied with modeling parts of the cosmos. They sought to simulate the entire known heavenly order, to bring every moving light in the night sky under the control of a single, elegant box of bronze. To operate this machine was to hold a working model of Greek cosmology itself, to see the complex clockwork of the heavens laid bare, and to believe utterly in a universe governed by comprehensible mechanical law. The mechanism's final voyage is a story written in its sunken companions. Resting beside it on the seabed for 2,000 years was a cargo of breathtaking opulence, a collection that frames the device not as an oddity, but as a treasure among treasures. This was no ordinary trading ship. It was a massive Roman freighter, perhaps 40 meters long, and it was sailing from the Greek east to the heart of Italy around 70 or 60 years before the Common Era. Its hold was filled with the finest spoils of a conquering power, a tangible result of Rome's growing domination over the Hellenistic world. Alongside the corroded bronze lump that would become the mechanism lay stunning works of art, masterpieces being transported as literal loot. Sculptures of philosophers and warriors, their bronze forms frozen in mid-thought or action. Exquisite marble statues, their fine drapery now softened by centuries underwater. Delicate glass bowls, their colors still faintly shimmering, and amphorae that once held prized wine or oil. There were even coins minted in Pergamon, helping archaeologists pinpoint the ship's last journey to a narrow window in the 1st century BCE. This context is crucial. It tells us what the Romans valued enough to risk a dangerous sea crossing. These were luxury goods, yes, but they were also cultural trophies. For the Roman elite of this period, possessing Greek art and knowledge was the ultimate mark of sophistication and power. A wealthy Roman patron would decorate his villa with captured Greek statues to display his worldliness. And among these physical trophies, it appears, was the antikythera mechanism. It was not packed with tools or common goods. It was stored among the most precious items, suggesting it was considered a rare and prized object, a piece of scientific paraphernalia, as valuable as any statue. Its presence on this ship hints at a profound and poignant transfer. Greek intellectual achievement, perhaps from a workshop in Rhodes, was being physically transported to Italy, not through scholarly exchange, but as plunder. The mechanism was intellectual property, literally sinking on its way to a new, powerful owner who likely saw it as a dazzling demonstration of cosmic order, a conversation piece of unrivaled genius. The ship itself becomes a time capsule, and the mechanism is its most enigmatic secret. The other artifacts help date it more precisely than its design alone ever could, anchoring it to that specific moment of cultural shift. They also reinforce its staggering value. Transporting such heavy, fragile cargo across the open Mediterranean was a risky, expensive endeavor, reserved only for goods that promised immense reward. That this complex bronze computer was deemed worthy of the journey speaks volumes. It was a masterpiece, considered significant enough to occupy precious space on a vessel carrying a fortune in art. So when we picture the mechanism, we should not see it isolated on a museum shelf. We should see it in the dark hold of that groaning ship, surrounded by silent marble gods and gleaming bronze, a small, intricate box holding a model of the universe, quietly ticking down its final moments before the storm hit and sent it all into the deep. Its loss was a tragedy for its Roman owner, but that loss created an incredible preservation chamber, sealing this snapshot of ancient ambition in cold, dark mud for 2 millennia. The story of the antikythera mechanism does not end in a museum case. Since its true nature was unlocked, it has transcended archaeology to become something far greater, a modern cultural icon. It features in acclaimed documentaries that bring its gears to life with computer animation. It fuels plots in historical novels and thrillers, where it might be a key to lost civilizations or a blueprint for impossible inventions. Most powerfully, it has inspired a global community of modern makers, engineers, and artists who have done what historians once thought impossible. They have built it. Using the detailed scans, enthusiasts around the world have constructed fully functional, precise replicas from brass, wood, and even Lego. Turning the crank on one of these modern recreations is a profound experience. You are not just observing an artifact, you are operating it, feeling the resistance of its interlocking gears, and watching the same cosmic dance that a Greek scholar witnessed 2 millennia ago. These projects are acts of reverence, a way to physically reconnect with an ancient mind. They prove the design was not just theoretical, but brilliantly, tangibly sound. For scientists and historians, the mechanism is a permanent lesson in humility. It stands as a silent rebuke to the arrogant idea that technological sophistication is the sole property of the modern age. It forces us to ask, what else have we underestimated? What other peaks of genius, now completely lost to time, once existed in the ancient world? This single artifact shatters the comforting myth of linear progress, revealing a far more complex and interesting truth, that human innovation is not a steady climb, but a landscape of isolated, dazzling summits and deep, forgotten valleys. In popular culture, the mechanism's very existence is so astonishing that it often gets woven into more speculative narratives, suggesting advanced ancient technologies or even visitors from other worlds. Yet the true story requires no such embellishment. The reality that a group of humans using simple tools, deep observation, and sheer intellectual courage could build a model of the cosmos is more inspiring than any fiction. Its ultimate legacy is dual. First, it grants us a renewed, profound respect for the depth and ambition of Hellenistic science, a world where philosophy and engineering were inseparable partners in the quest to understand the universe. Second, it serves as a timeless cautionary tale. Knowledge, even the most brilliant and hard one, is not a permanent possession. It is a flame that needs careful tending, passed from one hand to the next across the generations. The antikythera mechanism is that flame, miraculously preserved in bronze, reminding us that curiosity and ingenuity are our most precious inheritances, and that they must never be taken for granted. That intricate cosmic dance depended on a foundation of quiet, meticulous skill. To translate the grand theory of epicycles into a working model, the creators needed more than mathematical brilliance. They needed the hands of master artisans. This was a project that demanded expertise in 3 distinct arts: metallurgy, precision engineering, and scribble artistry, all converging on a single shoebox-sized object. First came the bronze itself, a carefully mixed alloy of copper and tin. The recipe was crucial: too soft and the fine gear teeth would wear down or bend, too brittle and they would snap. The alloy had to be just right to be cast into thin, flat plates, which were then likely hammered to achieve a uniform thickness, perhaps as thin as a couple of millimeters. These plates became the blank canvases for the cosmos. Onto them, artisans would scribe precise circles, the future outlines of gear wheels using a compass. Then, with astonishing patience, they began the most delicate work, cutting the teeth. There were no powered milling machines. Each triangular tooth was carved out by hand using small metal files. For a gear like the one with 223 teeth, this meant filing 223 separate, perfectly spaced slots, each one only about a millimeter wide. The consistency is breathtaking, a testament to a steady hand, immense concentration, and likely the use of some form of magnification, perhaps a simple lens filled with water. They may have used a master template, a kind of stencil, to mark the spacing, but the final shaping was a manual, artistic act. This same reverence for detail applied to the inscriptions. The tiny Greek letters covering the front and back plates, forming the user manual and labels, were engraved with a sharp stylus. Writing text at this scale, some characters less than a millimeter high on a curved bronze surface, is a calligraphic feat. A single slip of the hand could blur a crucial astronomical term. Every step in this process was a point of no return, a risk. A gear cut even slightly off its true circle, or with one tooth a fraction too wide, would not mesh properly. It would bind, grind, and bring the entire symphony of the heavens to a jarring, silent halt. This vulnerability makes the final, flawless product all the more astounding. It speaks of a workshop culture where patience was a primary tool, where apprentices spent years learning these silent skills before attempting such a masterpiece. We often glorify the philosopher who conceived the idea, but the antikythera mechanism forces us to honor the artisan who gave that idea physical form. Their work was a deep, practical understanding of materials and motion. They were scientists of the tangible, translating abstract cycles from clay tablets and scrolls into a language of interlocking bronze, where mathematics could be felt through the resistance of a hand crank and seen in the turning of a silver moon. This silent, painstaking craftsmanship is the unsung half of the mechanism's genius, the indispensable bridge between a vision of the cosmos and a cosmos you could hold in your hands. Yet for all we have learned, the mechanism still guards its final secrets. Decades of intense study have not closed the book, but instead opened new chapters of unanswered questions. Are there missing fragments lost to the seabed that modeled even longer astronomical cycles? How exactly were the delicate pointers for the 5 planets arranged on the already crowded front face? The scans suggest a complex, layered assembly, but the precise 3-dimensional configuration remains a tantalizing puzzle. Perhaps the most humbling mystery lies in the workshop itself. What specific tools, what jigs and templates allowed an artisan to cut a gear with 223 flawless teeth by hand? We can infer their skill, but the tactile knowledge, the muscle memory of that craft, is a silent gap in our understanding. These are not idle curiosities. They are active frontiers. International research teams continue to pore over the high-resolution scan data, searching for clues in the subtlest corrosion patterns and the faintest scratches that might be ghost inscriptions. Mathematicians build new models to test if the known gear trains could have been part of an even more sophisticated whole, perhaps accounting for subtler celestial phenomena the Greeks observed but we have not yet detected in the bronze. The research has expanded beyond the fragments themselves to a broader, thrilling possibility. Could other examples be waiting undiscovered? The Mediterranean seabed is a vast museum, and other Roman-era shipwrecks have yielded scientific instruments. Museum storerooms around the world hold unidentified lumps of corroded metal, dismissed for decades just as the antikythera mechanism once was. The hope persists that another device, perhaps a simpler version or a later model, might yet be found, offering a second witness to this lost tradition. This is the mechanism's enduring gift. It is not a static artifact whose story is complete. It is a conversation that spans millennia, where every new technological advance in our own time, from more powerful X-ray scanners to advanced eye pattern recognition, offers another chance to ask it a fresh question and receive a new answer. The device is a collaborative project across time, inviting each new generation of historians, engineers, and scientists to contribute a piece to the puzzle. Its very incompleteness is a powerful reminder that history is not a settled record, but a living field of discovery where the most profound objects continue to speak, if we have the patience and the ingenuity to listen. But to truly grasp its purpose, we must look past the gears and see the philosophy. The antikythera mechanism is a machine built to prove a point. It argues, in silent, turning bronze, that the universe is not a realm of capricious gods or random chaos. It is a cosmos, a word the Greeks used to mean a beautifully ordered and harmonious system. This was the revolutionary conviction that powered their greatest scientific minds, from Pythagoras, who believed numbers were the essence of reality, to the astronomers in Alexandria who mapped the sky with geometric precision. The device makes this abstract belief tangible. A philosopher could place it in a student's hands, turn the crank, and say, "Watch, see how the moon's phases follow a precise cycle. See how an eclipse arrives exactly when predicted by these interlocking wheels." The apparent wanderings of the planets are not mysterious. They are the inevitable result of circular motions combined. Every smooth rotation was a demonstration that mathematics ruled the heavens. This transformed education. Instead of relying solely on complex diagrams in scrolls or memorized tables of numbers, a teacher could now point to a moving model. The student could see the theory in action, watching the abstract become concrete. It made the intimidating scale of the cosmos comprehensible, personal even. You could literally hold a miniature version of the universe, operate it yourself, and through that interaction feel a part of its grand order. In this light, the mechanism is far more than a fancy calendar. It is a metaphysical statement. It declares that human reason, through observation and craftsmanship, can uncover the fundamental blueprints of nature and even rebuild them. This ambition is staggering. It represents a culture confident that the human mind could mirror the mind of the cosmos, that our artifices could reflect divine order. The device embodies the ultimate synthesis of their worldview, where art, science, mathematics, and philosophy were not separate disciplines, but intertwined threads in a single quest for understanding. Its very existence is a testament to an era that dared to believe the universe was not only knowable, but that its knowledge could be engineered, held in the palm of your hand, and turned with a simple crank. Theoretical blueprints are one thing, but to truly understand an ancient machine, you must build it. Over the past 2 decades, a handful of dedicated researchers and craftsmen have taken on that ultimate challenge, reconstructing the antikythera mechanism from the ground up. One of the first was Michael Wright, a former curator at London's Science Museum, who spent decades studying the fragments. Using traditional tools and painstaking handwork, he built a physical model entirely from brass, proving that the complex gear trains proposed by scholars could actually function as a cohesive whole. His replica was not just a display piece, it was a research instrument. By feeling the gears mesh and watching the pointers advance, he could test hypotheses about missing components and identify practical challenges the original makers would have faced, like managing friction or aligning the many-layered dials. Then came the work of the International Antikythera Mechanism Research Project. Using their high-resolution scans as a perfect digital blueprint, they collaborated with machinists to create a stunningly accurate model. This replica, often seen in documentaries, brings the device to life with silent, graceful motion. To see it in person is a small miracle. You watch the tiny, bicolored moon ball slowly rotate through its phases. You observe the eclipse pointer creep along its spiral track. The abstract ratios and tooth counts from the research papers transform into a whirring, clicking reality. It is no longer a broken artifact behind glass. It is a working oracle of bronze, performing its celestial calculations just as it did 2,000 years ago. These reconstructions serve a dual purpose. For scientists, they are vital test beds. Building a gear with 223 teeth by hand reveals the immense skill required, and assembling the nested plates shows the precise planning needed before the first piece of bronze was ever cast. For the public, they are bridges across time. A visitor can stand before a shining replica, grasp its hand crank, and for a moment operate the cosmos as a Greek scholar once did. Some modern makers have even used 3D printing to experiment with different configurations of the lost planetary gears, testing the limits of the design in ways that would be impossible with the fragile original. Each new build, whether crafted from traditional brass or polymer, offers fresh insights. They answer old questions and inevitably raise new ones. How much resistance would the original crank have had? How were the finely engraved plates fastened together? These physical models transform the mechanism from a historical mystery into a hands-on lesson in ancient engineering. They are the final, convincing proof that this was not a theoretical exercise, but a masterpiece of applied science, a machine that truly worked. By rebuilding it, we complete a conversation started long ago, affirming the genius of its creators not just with words, but with the turning of perfectly meshed gears. This elegant box of bronze fundamentally reshapes the story of the machine mind. By its very design, the antikythera mechanism rightfully claims the title of the world's oldest known analog computer. Think of the basic process. A user provides the input, a simple turn of the hand crank. That motion is then processed through a fixed physical program, the intricate network of gear ratios painstakingly calculated to embody astronomical cycles. The output is delivered clearly and precisely, the predicted positions of the sun, moon, and planets displayed on its calibrated dials. It takes data, processes it mechanically, and presents a result, fulfilling the core function of a computer, just with gears instead of silicon. This realization does more than assign an impressive label. It pushes the origins of computation back over 2,000 years, long before the famous names of Babbage or Turing. Of course, it operated on a different principle than the devices on our desks today. It was not programmable in the modern sense. You could not instruct it to run a new piece of software or perform a different calculation. Its program was literally forged in bronze, its purpose dedicated to a single, magnificent class of problems, modeling and predicting celestial motion. In that sense, it was a specialized calculator, a forerunner to later dedicated machines like tide predictors or artillery tables. Yet its sophistication places it on a distinct and brilliant branch of the computing family tree, one based on modeling continuous physical quantities through analog means. Its calculations were performed not by flipping binary switches between 0 and 1, but by the smooth, continuous rotation of gearwheels, directly simulating the continuous motions of the heavens themselves. Recognizing this device as a computer forces us to expand our definition of the term. Computation is not solely the domain of electronics and code. It is any systematic method for transforming information. The mechanism proves that intellectual invention can follow diverse and surprising paths. It stands as the venerable ancestor to a long lineage of analog thinking tools, from the intricate clockwork of medieval astronomical clocks to the clever simplicity of the slide rule, and even to the modern supercomputers that now calculate spacecraft trajectories and model galactic collisions. They all share a common ancestor, a silent bronze brain lost at sea, reminding us that the desire to compute, to predict, and to understand through mechanical aid is one of humanity's oldest and most profound impulses. That single, sunken masterpiece forces a profound question upon us. Was this device a miraculous one-off, a flash of genius that burned brightly and vanished? Or was it something far more revealing, the sole surviving member of an entire class of machines? The answer lies not only in the bronze itself, but in the whispers of history that surround it. Several ancient writers describe objects that sound eerily familiar. The Roman philosopher Cicero, writing in the 1st century before the Common Era, speaks with awe of a bronze sphere built by Archimedes that replicated the motions of the sun, moon, and planets. He mentions another similar device constructed by the philosopher Posidonius. For centuries, modern scholars read these accounts with polite skepticism, assuming them to be exaggerations or metaphors. The antikythera mechanism transforms those literary references from poetic legend into probable fact. It is the physical proof that such descriptions were not fantasy, but reportage. The sheer refinement of our device argues powerfully against it being a first attempt. Think of any complex technology, from the first steam engine to the first smartphone. Initial prototypes are clunky, experimental, and full of compromises. The antikythera mechanism shows no such signs of pioneering struggle. Its gearwork is confident, its inscriptions are standardized, its design is elegantly integrated. This level of polish suggests iteration, the kind that comes from a workshop tradition where craftsmen and astronomers had been solving these mechanical puzzles for generations, learning from each previous model. There is also a compelling statistical argument. If this was truly the only device of its kind ever built, the chances of it being on that one specific ship, sinking in that one specific storm, surviving 2 millennia on the seabed, and being discovered by those sponge divers are so vanishingly small as to be practically impossible. Its very existence against such odds is perhaps the strongest evidence that it was not alone. Historians now widely believe it represents a peak example of a known, if highly specialized, technology in the Hellenistic world. It was likely the finest model from the best workshop, a luxury item for a discerning Roman patron. This shift in understanding is monumental. It transforms the mechanism from a stunning anomaly, a ghost in the machine of history, into a tangible piece of evidence for a sustained and sophisticated technological culture. Its survival hints not at a fluke, but at a lost chapter, a quiet industry of philosophical instrument makers whose other works were melted down for scrap, lost in library fires, or simply worn out from use. We are not looking at a lone, inexplicable data point. We are looking at the single surviving sentence from a vast, burned library of mechanical knowledge. This realization deepens both the wonder and the tragedy, for it means an entire lineage of genius, a tradition of turning the cosmos into clockwork, faded from memory, leaving only this one cryptic messenger to tell us what was once possible. This drive to map the heavens was not a Greek monopoly, but a human instinct. Across the globe and across millennia, entirely separate civilizations turned their eyes upward, seeking patterns in the stars and constructing their own brilliant systems to explain them. In ancient China, scholars crafted exquisite armillary spheres, rings of bronze that modeled the celestial equator and the path of the sun, used for both observation and calculation. Far across the ocean, the Maya developed a calendar system of staggering complexity, interlocking sacred cycles of 260 days with solar years and tracking the movements of Venus with obsessive precision. Even in the vast silence of the Sahara, at a site called Nabta, a community arranged massive stones over 7,000 years ago to align with the summer solstice sunrise, creating one of the world's oldest known astronomical calendars. Each culture asked the same fundamental questions about time, seasons, and celestial order. Their answers, however, were expressed in the language of their own genius, through monumental architecture, intricate mathematics, or painstaking observational records. The Greek approach, crystallized in the antikythera mechanism, was distinct not in its ambition but in its chosen medium. Where others built in stone or wrote in codex, the Greeks aimed for mechanical synthesis. They chose to miniaturize the cosmos, to take that universal knowledge and compress it into a handheld engine of interlocking gears. This was their specific cultural answer to the shared human problem, a solution crafted from bronze and mathematical ratio. Viewing the mechanism within this global tapestry does something important. It prevents us from seeing it as a solitary, inexplicable marvel of a single culture, which can lead to narrow, Eurocentric narratives of progress. Instead, it reveals the beautiful diversity of intellectual expression. The mechanism is the Greek voice in a worldwide conversation, a voice that spoke in the language of precision engineering. Its story gains even greater resonance when understood not as an isolated peak, but as one summit in a vast range of human curiosity, each civilization climbing the mountain of the unknown by its own unique path. The seafloor near Antikythera is far from empty. Recent expeditions to the original wreck site have proven it is still a place of secrets. Using advanced exosuits that allow divers to work safely at great depths for longer periods, archaeologists have carefully sifted through the sediment. Their finds are breathtaking, a second wave of treasures emerging from the dark. They recovered a stunning, life-sized bronze statue of a young man, his form remarkably preserved. Even more tantalizing was the discovery of a severed bronze arm, its hand clenched as if still holding something precious. This arm did not match any of the previously found statues. It raises an immediate, electrifying question. If this arm is here, what else remains buried just beyond the reach of our lights? The sediment layers are deep and complex, a perfect preserver of delicate objects. It is entirely possible that other fragments of the original mechanism, perhaps a missing gear train or a section of its wooden case, still lie hidden there, waiting to complete the puzzle we have only partially assembled. The ultimate dream, of course, is the discovery of a second device. Could this ship have been carrying more than one? Was the mechanism so prized that a wealthy Roman patron ordered a pair? The statistical odds may be long, but the mere possibility ignites the imagination of every researcher who studies the site. This is not idle speculation. The ship was a floating treasury, and we have only explored a fraction of its scattered remains. Every handful of sand removed by careful hands could contain the next fragment of genius. The technology to search for it is leaping forward. New generations of autonomous underwater vehicles equipped with high-resolution sonar and sensitive metal detectors can now map the seafloor in exquisite detail, distinguishing between natural rock and man-made metal at depths that were once unreachable. These robotic scouts can cover vast areas of the Mediterranean seabed, scanning for the telltale chemical signature of ancient bronze amidst the ruins of a hull. Each unidentified sonar return, each magnetic anomaly, becomes a potential target for a future dive, a candidate for the next great discovery. But the hunt is not confined to the deep blue. There is another, quieter frontier much closer to home, in the storerooms and display cases of museums around the world. For over a century, countless artifacts pulled from the sea or dug from the earth were catalogued with the knowledge available at the time. A nondescript lump of corroded metal might have been labeled as slag or as an unidentifiable fitting and placed in a drawer. We now know what to look for. With portable, high-resolution surface scanners and reflectance transformation imaging, curators can re-examine these old collections without even touching the objects. They can search for the faintest traces of gear teeth under corrosion, or for microscopic Greek letters hiding in patina. It is a digital treasure hunt through our own attics, and the next fragment of an antikythera-like device could very well be sitting on a shelf, patiently waiting for us to see it with new eyes. This ongoing quest is what makes history a living, breathing discipline. The story of ancient technology is not finished. The final chapter of the antikythera mechanism may not yet be written. The thrilling prospect remains that one day, a diver's careful hand or a curator's sharp eye we'll uncover another piece of the puzzle, a discovery that could once again rewrite what we thought we knew about the ambitions of the ancient world. It is a powerful reminder that our past is still out there, buried in deep water and deep time, inviting us to keep looking. Its true legacy is not merely a list of gears and cycles, but a profound shift in perspective. The antikythera mechanism stands as a defiant monument to human genius, a whisper from the past that tells us our ancestors were far more sophisticated than we often comfortably assume. We have followed its journey from a stormy shipwreck to the quiet shelves of a museum, and finally into the glowing clarity of a three-dimensional scan. We have watched its bronze gears translate Babylonian numbers into the motions of planets, and seen its tiny moon ball wax and wane with mechanical grace. This device does more than predict eclipses. It challenges the very linear narrative of progress we so often cling to. It proves that brilliance is not a steady, upward climb, but a landscape of isolated peaks. A civilization can reach a dazzling summit of understanding, only to have the path to that summit crumble away behind it, leaving the achievement to be swallowed by silence. The mechanism is a fusion of three great rivers of knowledge: the meticulous observational data of Babylon, the bold theoretical ambition of Greece, and the sublime, patient craftsmanship of its unnamed artisans, all converging into a single, awe-inspiring object you could hold in your hands. As we reflect on this ancient computer, let it inspire a dual curiosity, a wonder for the past, yes, but also a question for the present and future. What other capabilities of ancient civilizations remain hidden, not in the ground, but in our own assumptions? And what does this single survivor tell us about the fragile, precious nature of knowledge itself, a flame that must be continuously tended across the generations? This story is a reminder that history is not a settled record, but an ongoing conversation with the artifacts and ideas left behind. If you found this journey through time as fascinating as I did, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What other historical mysteries captivate your imagination? For more deep dives into the puzzles of our past, be sure to subscribe. Until next time, keep questioning and keep exploring.